all of the news. It has shifted attention from the ground here in Los Angeles with troops on the ground in an urban area, with Donald Trump promising to do more. But let's focus in this moment on the question of the Middle East. We have 2 minutes before the break.
Well, 2 hours wouldn't be enough either. One of the things we have to recognize is what is leading to this conflict is the expanded use of preemptive action, supposedly to deter some failure to adhere to some expectation that in some ways no one seems to know what those expectations are. Granted, it's under the cover that the goal is to keep Iran from developing enriched uranium, which could then be developed into nuclear weapons and then placed on missiles. So the issue that they say is there is we don't want Iran to have a nuclear bomb. And so therefore, we're going to extend and expand the aggression. First, you had Gaza, then you had some action in other places where there was a preemptive act, and now you have Iran. And in the meantime, what the president has done is lifted sanctions in Syria and continues to embrace Saudi Arabia to create almost this kind of inner conflict amongst the Arab states as they might respond to whatever this aggression might be. And so the question becomes not only what is going on, to invoke our cultural psychologist Marvin Gaye, but also why is it going on? And I think that's going to be part of the bigger conversation.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are closing in on Juneteenth. We'll have a wealthy conversation about that on Wealthy Wednesdays with S. Todd Urey. But we're also going to dig a little bit deeper into what's going on in the mind of Donald Trump and in the Middle East. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, more of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Now at Verizon, we have some big news for your peace of mind. For all our customers, existing and new, we're locking in low prices for 3 years guaranteed on My Plan and My Home. That's future you peace of mind. And everyone can save on a brand new phone on My Plan when you trade in any phone from one of our top brands. That's new phone peace of mind. Because at Verizon, whether you're already a customer or you're just joining us, we got you. Visit Verizon today. Price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate. Additional terms and conditions apply for all offers.
Thy ticket, Lady Jennifer of Coolidge.
Well, many thanks, good sir. Hereeth my Discover card.
They accept Discover at Renaissance fairs?
Yeah, they do here. Discover is accepted at the places I love to shop. Getteth with the times.
With the times? You're playing the lute.
Yeah, and it sounds pretty good, right?
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
LA's newest soul food restaurant is getting spectacular reviews.
Great place with amazing food. The Sunday champagne brunch is fabulous. I saw the place on IG. We tried it for lunch. We were blown away by the food and the service. The restaurant has an inviting atmosphere and a dynamic vibe.
Over the years, Lionel has catered most major Black events in Los Angeles, including all of our KBLA Talk 1580 gatherings. But now he has his own spot, Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine, and you need to check it out at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles. Oxtails, baked or fried chicken, meatloaf, turkey chops, pork chops, catfish, short ribs, and all the fixins. Collard greens, mac and cheese, yams, red beans, black-eyed peas, and more. And of course, hot water cornbread, satisfying drinks, and delicious desserts. Lionel's is a great place for brunch, lunch, or dinner. If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you, because we've got your black. So head on over to Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles and tell Lionel you heard about it on KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest on Wealthy Wednesdays is Reverend Dr. S. Todd Yeary, where we discuss the politics of our faith. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, glad to be back. I think I may have a signal problem.
Unfortunately, I cannot hear Dr. Yeary. Dr. Yeary, can you hear me?
I need to reset.
Okay. I can't hear Dr. Yeary, but apparently everybody else can. Dr. Yeary.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I certainly can. My question is, can we be looking at a larger regional conflict?
Well, that's the concern, and that's a very real concern because not only do you have regional geopolitics, you also have the wider competitive marketplace, international politics, because there is such a close working relationship between Iran for getting oil to China. And so you have the Chinese off to the side, kind of observing what's going on. And while they have not yet opined on what's happening between Israel and Iran, I think that is also a concern. And so as this continues to expand, I think the number of diverse interests, maybe even competing interests, is going to grow as well. And so there's a lot of concern that this could be a significant destabilization to the global marketplace simply because there's so much of a dependence on OPEC oil to be able to fuel folks being able to moving goods and the like. In addition to bogging up, if you will, the ability to move by sea, depending on what goods are being moved from one place to another. And so all of this is a matter of going back to, you mentioned being 60. Remember when we were growing up, everybody wanted to get a globe so that you could see the world in the shape of that big round ball. Everybody might want to get a globe and look and see where Iran and Israel are located and all of the states that could be impacted. For the United States, Turkey becomes a significant concern simply because there are a number of military assets that are strategically positioned for the United States in the Middle East, in the region, that would be on the ground in Turkey. And so you've got to look at all of these different dynamics, and they're all quite honestly troubling. Even as we are talking about Iran, there's still this campaign going on in Palestine. Like Gaza is still, I guess, being excavated for this resort that the president said was going to be built there. And so you begin to kind of wonder, is this really an issue between Iran and Israel, or is it a proxy war for other interests that we're not really hearing from the United States?
Donald Trump said on a couple of occasions that Iran needed to make a deal. Something tells me that's not just a nuclear deal, but that behind the deals, whether it's in Ukraine, or whether it's in China over tariffs, there's always some mineral deal, some rare earth deal, some deal for oil, some deal for a commodity that Donald Trump seems to suggest it was always about this in the first place. How much longer can the Arab world stay on the sidelines if the United States chooses to engage on the side of Israel with Iran?
Well, that's why the president keeps attempting to play let's make a deal. Quite honestly, we don't know, because we don't know what's in the deals. If the deals are some quid pro quo that buys a little bit of abstinence from certain countries in the region, then that becomes a concern. But you mentioned something that's really important, the access to rare earth minerals and how essential they are to some of the things that the United States cannot produce itself here. A lot of it has to do with technology. And so when we consider the deal that the president has suggested and even encouraged Russia to make with Ukraine and vice versa. Part of that conversation about ongoing U.S. support to Ukraine was around rare earth minerals. So when we talk about rare earth minerals, it takes us then back to this larger historical conversation about colonization and why there was a carving up of the continent to be able to really get access not to what was above ground, but what was in the ground. And the strategic advantages, most of it initially was around gold and diamonds and the like. But now when they find out there's something else there as technology has advanced, you're now seeing a repositioning of strategic interest and military force to be able to lay claim to rare earth minerals, just like there's a conversation that off the coast of Gaza is untapped liquid natural gas, several trillion cubic feet that could certainly generate a large amount of money. The question becomes now, is this really an issue about removing Hamas, or is this really a conversation about claiming what's just off the coast and not yet to be tapped? And so look at those negotiations when we talk about let's make a deal. You got to figure out who's doing the deal. And if we were sitting down playing cards, you got to watch the person who's got the deck in their hands, because all they want you to do is to cut the deck, not watch how they are dealing from the bottom of the deck.
And I want to remind our listeners that both sides are playing this game. Hunter Biden's laptop in Ukraine was about rare earth minerals. It was about his relationship to companies and deals for interests that he represented that impacted technology, the lithium, the cobalt, and other rare earth minerals to which Hunter Biden had no legal right to, but his father was vice president and president. So I'm not harping around that as much as I want to make the point. Both sides, Democrat and Republicans, knownst or unknownst to the American people, are looking for rare earth minerals behind just about every conflict in the world that we engage in.
Well, it's true. And when we talk about it, it's not the Democratic America or the Republican America that actually has the interest. It is the historical America, the America that has expanded and extended its interest across a number of continents and national boundaries. And those conversations continue even to this day. And because the domestic interest, when we are looking at cuts to domestic spending and then trying to figure out how do you force domestic companies that are headquartered in the United States to bring production back. All of this is part of, I think, a larger narrative of not only destabilizing, but realigning what the 21st century economics look like for the United States. And of course, those that are persons under the law, which would include corporations. There are corporate interests in here that also need to be stated. And we also need to look at those very, very closely, because I believe that is a strong motivator for some of the positions that we are seeing the administration take.
Dr. Uri, your thoughts on the historical significance of Juneteenth and what this is, a celebration or a commemoration?
The last time we had this conversation, I think I gave you the same answer. It's a yes, right? A celebration in the sense that the news had finally reached those in Galveston who needed to know they were free. The commemoration is tied to the obligation, the responsibility we have, that even though the news got there, the policies didn't follow. And while the general field order that accompanied the Union General that carried the information about the 40 acres and a mule was there, what we seem to lose touch with is that before there was an Emancipation Proclamation, there was actually a Homestead Act of 1862 that created a government-sponsored mechanism for the transfer and the establishment of intergenerational wealth that came in a package 4 times the size of the 40 acres and a mule, that formerly enslaved persons and their descendants are still waiting for. And so while the news was getting there late, the hustle was already well underway, that there was this shift with government sanction. We're going to give to whom we want to give, and we'll take from whom we choose to take. And the benefits that will flow therefrom are ours to decide. And so part of the commemoration is to remember that while the news got there, the wealth, the legal protections, the access, the opportunities that should have come with it are still fleeting even until this day. And so part of our obligation is not just to cook out and get sleepy, but to get focused and clear on what is the unfinished business. If we are continually, all right, Dr. King said we kept presenting a check that came back insufficient funds. Well, we don't typically write checks anymore. So when we're trying to do electronic funds transfers, it gets rejected. And so we're still looking at that. We see it in terms of what's coming from the Supreme Court. We see it in terms of what's coming out of the House and the Senate. There is still more work to do. And so if all we did was get a message, but we didn't get the meaning, then obviously we've still got more work to do. And Juneteenth should require of us to not only examine why it took so long for the news to get there, but why we're still waiting for justice to arrive.
Dr. Urey, I think about the theological argument in the book of Exodus that eventually led to the Passover experience, that eventually led to the Seder dinner, and the annual commemoration of our Jewish brothers and sisters to reflect upon the signs and wonders that made their journey out of slavery possible. The same God that they served is the same God that we serve, but that same God who opposed slavery then must have opposed it here. But the process out of slavery in the United States included, as you well know, admitting one free and one slave state to the Union in a number of compromises. It led to the election of the 16th president, whose impact on American history was so profound, we almost don't know who the first 15 were as it relates to our story. The passage of the executive order, his issuance, because it didn't require Congress or the Senate or the House or the courts, the executive order, the Emancipation Proclamation. The lateness of the news arriving by way of General Granger to the people of Galveston, Texas. The elevation of the story to a national story by Sheila Jackson Lee, who I had the privilege of serving with in the Congress. It seems that we have a Passover story too, but it's passing over what the Constitution was to what the Constitution with the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, the struggle for Black men to have the right to vote, the struggle for women with the 19th Amendment to vote. All of that too is part of our Passover experience as African Americans. I don't know if there is a group that can tell that story more profoundly than the ministers, who might see these events as political, but I'd like to make the argument and to challenge you to make the argument that this is actually divine.
It's a profound question in this sense, that with the Passover comes divine intervention. And that divine intervention, the remembering of the story of deliverance for our Jewish brothers and sisters. Let's remember that part of that was then the accountability that would come with the liberation. It wasn't just we're going to get free, we're also going to get justice. And this notion that somehow or other you can give us rhetorical freedom, without giving us real-time, real-life justice is the ongoing problem with the United States. And so this ability to talk out of both sides of its mouth, right? When we recognize that even when we consider the question of reparations, when Southern plantation owners got remuneration for the lost labor that they had immorally and arguably unlawfully held, they got paid for what they lost when our forebears were liberated. We, who created the wealth, produced it in an agricultural economy, gave the United States its identity as being the Cotton King, never got any of those benefits. And when it was time to establish an economic framework for the transition from being enslaved to being free, the government reneged. And so this isn't the first time that we will see it. This is why it's got to be a commemoration. We are constantly seeing the government renege. The most current version of it is in the contracting and retracting of the size of the federal service, that many of those persons who are losing their jobs right now, being forced out right now, are persons that look like you and me, persons who have worked faithfully for this United States government after there was a long period of time when we couldn't get what we would call a good government job. And so this need is to, one, not just make it the fact that we won't get mail tomorrow, so bills aren't going to show up. You're not going to be able to mail a letter. The banks are going to be closed. It has to be about why Juneteenth as a thing is even necessary. It means then that the reason you observe it is because there was news. What was the news? That people who were being held as property were persons and therefore needed to be free. And so now that means we know that there were people held as slaves. And so we have to work through that whole issue and not just use it as this kind of panacea that gives a sense that, oh, we're getting rhetorical acknowledgement, but we're not getting substantive relief. We've got to have that conversation, and we've got to have it right now. Time is not waiting for us.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come back, more on Wealthy Wednesdays with Dr. S. Todd Urey.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson says he has not heard from federal officials about planned ICE raids, but the city is preparing.
There's no communication from the federal government with our local police department. It's quite problematic.
He says President Trump is fueling fear and division and vows to protect residents and make sure they know their rights. Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial is on hold until Friday after a juror called out with vertigo. Another juror was dismissed earlier this week. Court is closed Thursday for Juneteenth. And reparations may be coming for some Black Californians. Two bills from Senator Akilah Weber Pearson are gaining traction. One would create a process to verify if someone is a descendant of slaves, making them eligible for reparations. The other would establish a state agency called the Bureau for Descendants of American Slavery, aimed at supporting eligible individuals and educating the public on the true history of slavery. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A lot of tension in last night's game between the Dodgers and San Diego Padres. 4 players were hit by pitches, including Dodger star Shohei Ohtani, when home plate umpire Ryan Blakeney issued a warning to the Dodgers after Lou Trevino hit San Diego's Fernando Tatis in the 3rd inning. Dodgers manager Dave Roberts stormed onto the field to protest. The argument led to Roberts getting ejected for the first time this season. Roberts was upset that the Padres did not get a warning after Randy Vasquez hit Ohtani in the 2nd inning. By the time everybody cooled down, the Dodgers went home with an 8-6 win. The Angels shut out the Yankees for the second night in a row. They cruised to a 4-0 win. Angels pitcher Kyle Hendricks had 9 strikeouts in 6 innings. The Yankees have lost 5 straight and have not scored in 29 innings. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
It's never too early to start talking about money in realistic ways with your kids. JP Morgan Chase navigates how to educate your kids now about creating long-lasting, healthy money habits. Whether your kids are in elementary school, high school, or college, now is a great time to start a conversation about ways to create healthy money habits as they grow, ultimately benefiting their financial future. Talking about money in a realistic way to support your kids' lifestyle and dreams, your first banking account geared towards high school or college. It's never too early. Explaining the basics, what you earn and what you spend, building financial confidence starts with getting organized. Learning and practicing vital money skills now will stay with them for life. Tools they will have to stay on top of their finances and achieve their goals. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You ready?
Somebody make some noise in this joint.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates its 4th anniversary this year on Juneteenth.
Here we go again.
Hard to believe 4 years has gone by so fast.
Oh my God.
But here we are, still standing, still loving and serving our people as best we can.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
To celebrate our 4th anniversary, we have 4 big events, and you're invited to all of them.
She got a lot to say. Let's do this.
Let's get it on.
On Wednesday, June 18th, we go live on C-SPAN for the 2nd consecutive year with our Climate Justice Plus Black Health Symposium. Tavis Smiley will moderate an all-star panel of thinkers and influencers as we continue our vitally important climate justice work.
Hey, Tavis Smiley, talk about.
On Thursday, June 19th, you're invited to join us as we celebrate Juneteenth and our 4th anniversary. There will be plenty of food, fun, great music, good vibes, and all of your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts will be there.
Yeah, man.
Flip the beat. On Saturday, June 21st, there are 2 big events you're invited to attend.
I can't wait to hear it.
This year, KBLA Talk 1580 continues its annual partnership with the Empowerment Congress for a community celebration and dialogue to educate, engage, and empower. This year's theme is resilience in the face of chaos.
Can't wait to see what's up next.
Y'all ain't ready for this.
And new this year is our State of Black Women in Los Angeles Symposium, moderated by Dominique DePrima, with a luncheon to follow. Dominique will be leading a dialogue with some of the most impactful Black women leaders in Los Angeles, and you're invited to join.
This is it.
All of these events are free, but seating is limited, so you must register in advance at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can find all the details you need about each event.
Check it out.
It's our 4th anniversary, and we would love to celebrate it with you.
I love you guys so much. There's nothing you can do about it.
We're KBLA Talk 1580.
The only black talk radio station west of the Mississippi.
Thank you for having our black.
Happy anniversary, KBLA.
We love you. Love you.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Reverend Yuri, welcome forward.
Good to be with you as always. It's always an interesting conversation.
Reverend Yuri, let me apologize for some of the small technical details we're having with our equipment, but I did want to ask this question. I don't see a separation from the Jewish people that I know here domestically in the United States and my friends that I have in Israel from the Exodus story and how they see Israel. They see Israel and its formation as part of a story that dates back to the Exodus itself. Now, the reason I raise that is because they're today in nearly all-out war in the Gaza Strip, in Iran, and it could be a spreading conflict. Our story, our Exodus story, is right here in the United States. And yet I don't see the necessary connection between their fighting for their homeland that emanates from the Exodus story translating into our desire to translate our Exodus story into a fight for our land, to fight for what belongs to us. Help me here, Pastor.
Well, short version is stigma. When self-loathing, self-hate is baked into the recipe, then you try to detach and avoid any association or affiliation with the rare earth minerals that give you your identity. So when we tell the story, we actually are encouraged to start somewhere after our story actually begins. We start somehow dependent upon being separated from forcibly from the continent. That's called the dark continent, right? And so we don't want to go back and learn anything about that. I've heard some who are very prominent in the cultural space who, when asked about the designation of being African American, they assert that I'm not African American, I'm American. I didn't lose anything in Africa. Well, that's partly true. You didn't lose anything. That's because the thing that was yours was actually taken by force. Let me also kind of put here that when the Berlin Conference happened, and there was what we would call the carving up of the continent, there were two prerequisites for a European power to lay claim on portions of the land. One was you had to have a viable economic interest. And second, you had to have the military capability to defend it. Now, I want to put those two things in context because we often detach militarism from economics, but militarism is economics. They're not only not separate, they are the same. And so when Dr. King starts critiquing militarism, materialism, racism, those are all parts of the recipe. And so our challenge on Juneteenth is what we should do is we need to have our version of a Juneteenth Seder meal where we sit down as community and we tell the story, and we don't tell it from the genesis of our suffering. We start from the genesis of our genius, because if we get beyond the suffering from the abuse, from the oppression, we then go back and we start reclaiming pieces that we forgot about long ago. As a matter of fact, our origin is actually tied to actually the mapping of what happens in what is called the Garden of Eden. When those rivers are named and identified, those rivers, the Nile, still there, the Tigris, the Euphrates, right? We've got to locate ourselves in the origin story that when this mystical, magical, creative moment where that which is ultimately sovereign in the universe created everything that we do see from things we cannot see, and then placed in us the power of imagination and vision to be able to do things like build pyramids without the benefit of heavy equipment, to be able to position Horomachit, the Sphinx, in the desert facing the eastern horizon so that as every day starts, they're keeping watch. This notion that somehow or other we're lost, the recognition that the library, the grand library at the University of Sankore in Timbuktu, that was a library before libraries were in vogue. And guess where? Right? And so this notion that somehow or other now, if you want to keep something from Black people, you put it in a book, is a contradiction to who we are at our genesis. And so I think we need our own version of a Seder meal, of a retelling of the story over and over and over again that infuses in us the boldness to be unapologetic about making ongoing righteous demands about not only our legacy, but also our destiny.
You know, I make the argument that part of that story for my Jewish friends, particularly my friends who live in Israel, and my brothers and sisters who live in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, that they see this land as something promised to them by God, complete with this defense, complete with its economic survival, because God led them out of a condition of suffering, slavery, for 400 years and promised them land. That's how I see 60 Blacks in Congress. That's how I see the United States Senate. That's how I see America, changing America, because my country 'tis of thee. This is my land of liberty and emancipation. This is my religion. This is what I do. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, Dr. S. Todd Yeary, some more wisdom on Wealthy Wednesdays and a word of hope. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attention. If you owe money to the IRS, this is an urgent message. The IRS is cracking down by sending out collection letters, garnishing paychecks, seizing bank accounts, and putting liens on homes and businesses. They call it enforced compliance. And you better watch out, because penalties and interest on unpaid taxes compound daily, making it even harder to get out of debt. Don't let tax debt destroy your life. You need to call Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax resolution firm. They're experts in taxpayer assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, Optima's resolved over $1 billion of tax debt for their clients. Let them fight on your behalf, helping to put your tax problems to rest. Call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cow Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show in our final segment with Dr. S. Todd Urey. Dr. Urey, welcome forward.
Man, you get it all in an hour. I'm not sure how you do it, but
well, man, I need a second hour. So let me throw this out at you, and before we get to our word of hope, and I think that for me, it's a puzzle that I hope you can solve and settle for our listeners and for myself. So the Exodus story and the freedom of Jewish people from the God of Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, David and Jesus, that story and that lineage of leadership. Many of my evangelical friends in the United States, I mean, they want to see Israel expand all the way to Jerusalem, all the way to Bethlehem. I mean, they really are serious about going as far west or east, if you will, in that part of the world as they can to make that part of the historical, as they call it, Israel. One could obviously make the case that it's the historical Palestine. And so my Arab brothers and sisters and Palestinian brothers and sisters see what's taking place in the Middle East as part of their religion too. This is their religion. And so we send Democratic presidents and diplomats from Democratic and Republican presidents, but they're in the middle of a multi-millennial centuries struggle over land that both sides see God as having promised and or given to them. I see ourselves in a similar struggle. I mean, the Missouri Compromise, you had one free state and one slave state to the Union. The California Act, you add one free state, one slave state to the Union. I see African Americans as having added stars to the American flag. I ain't just complaining about the 50 stars. I know the process by which we started out with 13 stars and then we ended up with 50, and how we're fighting for DC to get a 51st state. And this land is our land, but not just politically. It is our land because the God of Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, David, and Jesus intervened in a slavery process for me and my ancestors, just like he intervened in a slavery process for Jewish people. And therefore, I'm working for better education, better healthcare, better housing, not because it's political, but because it's my religion. It's what God has promised to me. And my producer wanted to put up this slide right here for those of you who can visually see the program, because the 13th Amendment to the Constitution didn't just free us. It freed Mexicans from slavery in the United States. It freed women from slavery in the United States. It meant Asian Americans who migrate to the United States will never have to be slaves because we've already taken care of that. Our relationship with God did that. Help me through this liberation theological thinking. And then, Pastor, if you could close us this Wealthy Wednesday, on a word of hope.
Well, first, let me say God's liberation doesn't come with a qualifier. Jubilee, 7 cycles of 7 years, the 50th year is Jubilee. Jubilee was the ultimate, final, complete retirement of any obligation that had you committed to someone else's economic well-being. So the 13th Amendment still comes way short. Because when the exception clause is put in there, basically it says, not that we're getting rid of slavery, we're just substituting it. And so we're going to create a new mechanism because slavery shall be outlawed except in instances of punishment for crime. And we now are going to create an alternative mechanism. The plantation is now the prison. And the economy that allows states as sovereigns to get free labor is what sustained Alabama after the Civil War. It was convict leasing. What we now see as a privatized prison system where private prison companies sell their stock on Wall Street and negotiate occupancy minimums with the states where they serve, then you got to send somebody somewhere. And therefore, when you get caught up in this notion, you're now reassigned a label that says you are legally no longer a person, but a slave. So it's that sense that Juneteenth has to continue to push, because we've learned how to work around the limitations of the 13th Amendment, but the 13th Amendment gives us partial liberation, not complete, which is one of the reasons why once you get stigmatized in the system, then you might as well have had a brand on your body that identifies you as someone else's property, right? Because you've been labeled. And so our obligation on Juneteenth is not just to tell the story, but to tell the story so that it inspires within us the continuing burn, the fire that can only be kindled by fresh wood, because we recognize that the liberation mission is still incomplete. And therefore, we are justified. As a matter of fact, we are obligated to have to continue to raise these demands, local, state, federal, and international levels, until we get what the late Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, called us to do, to remember that we're forward ever, backwards never.
Backwards never.
That if we are going to make progress, that means then we cannot be stationary, because progress is forward movement. And our issue is we've become a bit satisfied with being a little further along than where we were, but not far enough along for where we should be. And therefore, we have more work to do.
That's very impressive that you would reach back and grab the Osagyefo, Kwame Nkrumah in this moment, because as we reflect upon the great liberation tradition that was Nkrumah, so many people were inspired to move beyond the colonial empire across the entire continent because of his leadership. Is it possible, given the chaos that we find ourselves in, that leadership, Dr. Yeri, including yourself, might emerge differently in the eyes of the public and offer a similar breath of hope that can lead us out of these chaotic and very difficult times?
I think it's less a matter of a question of probability or likelihood. It really is a matter of necessity. We must rise to this moment. That's why when we go back and read the book of Joshua, as there's this crossing over, one representative of each of the 12 tribes grabs a stone from the middle of the river and carries it over to the other side for the first night that they would sleep delivered. And it was done so that when future generations would ask the question, what do these stones mean? Not the stones, not someone else's stones. What do these stones mean? We would be able to testify by retelling our history. And so part of Juneteenth is to go back and have a conversation with the future generation from those who got the news. What do these stones mean? That while they were waiting to get the news, they maintained their dignity and their faith in God. And then when they got the news, they didn't get bitter, they got better and stayed focused on what we now inherit.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. It's Wealthy Wednesdays with Dr. S. Todd Yeary. He's a regular contributor on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Dr. Yeary, thank you for spending the afternoon with us.
A blessed Juneteenth to you. Celebrate and commemorate.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Until tomorrow.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.